So, knowing what we know now, Sony casting Aaron Taylor Johnson, aka Quicksilver, as their new Kraven is it's probably a bigger deal than we initially thought, right? Just a feeling. Hey everyone, and welcome to the Sandbox. After a year without the MCU, we were blessed with a very full one with 9 projects in total. So today I'm going to share my thoughts on each of them and rank all 4 MCU films and 5 Disney Plus shows from the worst to the best. Starting at the bottom with number 9 is What If. Now, I did not hate this one at all. I actually had a lot of fun with it, but one of these has got to be at the bottom, and unfortunately, it is What If. Going into the show, I was very excited to see the variety of alternate dimensions, how one little change could drastically alter the MCU as we know it, and for the most part, I think the show delivered. In particular, I thought the Doctor Strange episode hit very hard emotionally, and the Zombies episode was just a ton of fun. But I will say that I was confused for a while because from how Feige had talked about the show, it seemed to me that each episode would be going off one movie at a time, linearly, phase by phase, and changing one thing about that movie to show how the MCU could have been different. I thought these were supposed to be realistic changes that they had actually discussed and toyed around with and were quite possibly a part of the MCU, but after watching, it's obvious to me that that was not the case. From killing the Avengers to having a party Thor fight Captain Marvel, this show embraced the goofy and the crazy, which normally I love, but because of my higher expectations for this show, and because it was the first MCU animated project, I was kind of underwhelmed with it. This was not the Marvel project that I was waking up early every Wednesday morning to watch before work. Now, I think the finale was amazing, but when the Watcher needed to get a team together to stop Vision Ultron, not only was it obvious to me what characters he was going to pull together, but it kind of made the episodes before it feel somewhat trivial. I mean, am I crazy for second guessing the all-knowing Watcher's dream team? However, all that said, I enjoyed the show and I am looking forward to season 2. I just think this is not the one that I would quickly rewatch as opposed to the others on this list. Which leads me to number 8, Eternals. Where I felt What If came in a little bit under my expectations, Eternals came in a bit over, which is largely due to the numerous negative reviews I saw before going into the theater. I was expecting a narrative mess with meaningless deaths and spotty CGI, but I did not come out feeling the same way. First off, yes, I see where the non-linear narrative could trip some people up, but I wasn't really ever that confused, nor was my fiance. We both thought the direction worked well for the story that they were trying to tell. And as for the deaths in this film, obviously one we were supposed to feel for, that being Gilgamesh, and I definitely did. I remember thinking at some point in the movie, I think Gilgamesh is actually my favorite of the ones we've met so far. And then they killed him, and I was sad. Now for Ajak, a lot of people are using her death towards their negative review that because of the non-linear storytelling, they didn't feel any weight behind her death. They didn't care. And without rambling too much here, I don't think we were supposed to. We were supposed to care for Icarus and Cersei and Sprite because those were the characters that they had set up at that point in the film. And we were supposed to care for them because we see how much they look up and love Ajak, and her death is largely what drove the plot from there. Marvel had 2 options with this story, either scratch the reveal and make Ajak's death more meaningful, or use this to drive the plot and have Gilgamesh's death serve as the more personal thread to inspire our team. And honestly, I think they made the right choice. Now, obviously the story still has its flaws, and I am by no means trying to fanboy here, but for the most part, I really enjoyed this film. I found myself immersed in the world and connecting to the large majority of the characters on screen. Now, moving on to CGI, I thought the general artwork and the vision here was incredible. This is the type of movie where CGI is important and shows its value. You cannot tell this kind of story without it, and I thought that it serviced the movie very well. Better, in fact, than other films on this list where I didn't think it was really all that necessary. That said, this film does make me scratch my head as to the purpose of introducing the Eternals at this point in this story. I don't think it's necessarily too early or too late, but I for one didn't need an Eternals film right now, nor do I think I need a sequel anytime soon. But at this point, I have learned to trust in Feige. Now, I am very excited to see Kit Harington return as the Black Knight and hopefully team up with Blade or Moon Knight down the line. Though I have to say that his slight introduction in another origin story, and a team's origin story at that, I found to be a very silly decision. But to end on a high note with this one, I absolutely loved the score. I had listened to the Eternals theme the night before seeing the film and didn't think much of it, but once I was in the theater, the score really helped immerse me into this fantasy epic. And honestly, if it wasn't for Dune's tremendous score that I had experienced just weeks before, Eternal's score probably would have wowed me a bit more. Overall, for these bottom two, I am giving Season 1 of What If a soft B and Eternals a very solid B. But moving on to my B pluses, starting off with number 7, I have the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. If you saw my MCU Phase 4 ranked by excitement video, you'll know that it pains me to have this one as low as it is because it was in my top 3 of most anticipated Marvel projects. Now, upon rewatch, I think this is a much more digestible story, but going into it as excited as I was did lead to some initial disappointment. This show sets up a lot early on, and going into episode 5, it didn't feel like they were ready to pay everything off yet. And lo and behold, many things were put off for future projects, such as Agent Carter's future and US Agent, as well as the conclusion for Bucky's arc that I still found to be a letdown. The first episode really sets up this emotional journey for him of making amends with those he hurt as the Winter Soldier. It sets up a wonderful relationship for him and Yori, and we even have Sam giving him that final push in episode 5. All the pieces were in place, everything was there, but they just didn't do the arc justice in my opinion, as we didn't see him make an effort to ensure Yori feels better, rather than just Bucky himself. As for the villains, I think they were definitely intriguing, but Marvel didn't do a good enough job at making them dangerous enough. They focused primarily on making them sympathetic for the first 4 episodes, rather than making them a credible threat that I should fear. Even Thanos was a dangerous maniac with a questionable cause. If people can get behind his message, certainly they could have made the Flag Smashers much more dangerous while having Sam question their morality. That said, on rewatch, it's clear that this series wants our focus on Sam and his inner dilemma with being not only the next Captain America, but a black Cap. It's a dilemma that I didn't fully understand the first time around because, simply put, Sam was my favorite minor character going into the series, and I knew that he would make an awesome Captain America. But seeing the show dive into the racial division within this country without making it so over the top that it's unwatchable really made it connect with me the second time through. The finale felt somewhat forced and preachy, and it still does, but seeing as the show's mission was mainly character development, it was really rewarding to see Sam finally helm the Stars and Stripes. As for the action and visual effects, I think they did an incredible job. It's hard to tell what's CGI and what's not, which for a grounded story like this is essential. For instance, a lot of Sam's new suit is CGI, which I would never have known if I hadn't seen a video breaking it down for me.
There are no seams or zippers in superhero costumes, so those all had to be replaced and touched up.
And lastly, while the score didn't do anything to blow me away, I did enjoy it and I found many parts of it to be nostalgic. At times it does sound like generic action music, but to be honest, I'm fine with that. Moving on to number 6, I have Black Widow. While I can agree that this film is a few years too late, it was nice to revisit the fallout of Civil War and see what Natasha was up to before going on the run with Cap and Sam. Going into this, I really just wanted a fun, action-packed political thriller that revisits Budapest at some point, introduces Yelena as our new Black Widow, and solves the mysteries of the infamous Red Room. And while I don't think they gave us as much as they could have for Budapest, I found the film to be a very enjoyable film that was more grounded and grittier than most Marvel films we get. Yelena's character absolutely stole the show for me, and she is what put this one just barely above the Falcon and the Winter Soldier. She has quickly become one of my top 20 characters, and her development in Hawkeye only cemented that for me.
Ugh, that was disgusting.
Now, seeing as the film revolves around Yelena and Natasha trying to help save and reverse the brainwashing of the other Black Widows, I definitely think that a Hawkeye flashback with Natasha would have really elevated this film and possibly put it up a spot or two on my list. However, that said, this was a fun and action-packed film with great characters and surprisingly emotional moments. The music added to that gritty spy vibe, and it managed to separate this one from other grounded MCU films. And while the CGI was a bit over the top, even for me, I found it to be an epic send-off for our girl in black. But kicking off my top 5 is WandaVision.
WandaVision, WandaVision, WandaVision.
This was initially supposed to be our 5th or 6th project in Phase 4, but due to COVID, WandaVision became not only the first project, but the first Disney Plus limited series for the MCU. The show made the bold decision to immediately throw us into the story and the world that Wanda has created, offering tiny hints and clues within those first few episodes into the bigger picture of what's really going on. I found the show's structure to be incredibly intriguing and allowed the show to really get at the heart of what makes Wanda tick. And while the show had a slower start than expected and much less action than it should have had, the show's journey was so engaging and it offered amazing character development for Wanda Maximoff. The cast of characters that they brought in and built around Wanda all did amazing jobs, and bringing together Agent Wu, Darcy Lewis, and Monica Rambeau was probably the best decision of the year. It was certainly the character mashup that I never knew I needed. The parts that didn't work for me are easily overshadowed by the amazing performances, breathtaking visuals, and unique premise for a limited series set in the MCU. The finale didn't quite land, but upon rewatch it becomes more clear to me why they did that, setting up Wanda's involvement and potential evil corruption in Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness. But coming in ahead of it at number 4 is Loki. This show really impressed me. It was my least anticipated project of the ones announced for Phase 4, as I was worried it would diminish the consequences of Infinity War and Loki's sacrifice. Reverting his character to the 2012 version and bringing him back into the fold was not a decision I looked forward to, but watching Loki fall in love with a variant of himself and learn his ambitions for the Infinity Stones were superficial in the grander scheme of things really worked for me. The first episode convinced me early on, especially with Owen Wilson's Mobius showing Loki the path he was headed on. The story itself was very solid and the most consistent of the first 3 shows we got, displaying a great combination of mysteries and character work. The show had me interested from the beginning to the end, and while not flawless, the performances of Tom Hiddleston, Owen Wilson, and Sophie DiMartino secured an A for this show. But besides the story, I found the visuals to be amazing, and the music had this haunting detective vibe that just really worked for me and immersed me into this show. I look forward to seeing Season 2, as well as any repercussions that this show has on the greater MCU, primarily the Prime Reality and our main timeline. Next up at number 3 is Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
Shang-Chi.
Shang-Chi.
Shang.
It feels like forever since we had such an amazing martial arts based superhero film, but I don't think we've had any as solid as this. Shang-Chi is, at its core, a story about family. Not only the one we are born into, but also the one we create along the way. His story of leaving a world he didn't want to be a part of any longer is captivating and heartbreaking, and his relationships with those around him are all super unique and fun. The humor in this film had me laughing out loud, especially with Awkwafina's Katie, and the adventure had me on the edge of my seat. Zhu Wenwu's character was probably the best villain of Phase 4 so far, as he isn't inherently a bad person, but a very corrupted and misguided father. While I wish the story had delved into the history of the Ten Rings within the MCU as we know it a bit more, I found the world building here to be incredible. The action was non-stop fun as well, and the CGI lended to it very well with scenes like the bus scene, the Ten Rings attack in Macau, and the fight between Wenwu and his wife Ying Li. I do have to say that on initial watch, I thought the third act just kind of came out of nowhere, and the CGI didn't feel necessary to me here. But upon a rewatch, it's just so epic, and it does a great job at displaying the power of the Ten Rings and how a character like Shang-Chi can even stand a chance in the world of the MCU. Lastly, as for the music, I thought the score was borderline genius. There are tons of nods within the music that dance alongside the choreography and further build the characters. When I heard Ying Li's leitmotif during Sean's final fight with his father, my heart sunk. All in all, this movie is not perfect, but it is damn fun and easily earns an A from me, as well as a spot in my top 3. But taking the runner-up spot is none other than Hawkeye. For such a grounded story that relies so little on spectacle or epic moments, this is the show that I just could not wait for week after week. It does a tremendous job at digging into Clint's character, showing us more of that reserved and family-focused hero who is much more than just the world's greatest archer. His development with being hard of hearing, coupled with my new favorite heroine, Kate Bishop, made it impossible for me to take my eyes off the screen, and I'm a pretty distracted viewer. Kate is such a relatable hero who just wants to help the world after being coddled her whole life with wealth and security, but Clint shows her the downsides and dangers that come with being a hero. You don't just gain physical injuries or impairments, but also emotional distress. Clint has lost parts of himself, evident by his time as Ronin and the recent loss of his best friend, and this show does an excellent job at weaving that specific storyline into the hopeful one of the eager Kate Bishop. Week after week, the story felt like it just got bigger and bigger with multiple unraveling mysteries, and while I do think that the scripts could have benefited from one more round of polishing, I think the show pulled it off in the end with the finale that actually stuck the landing. The show was just so dang fun and exciting, from the trick arrow-filled action scenes to the heartfelt character moments. As for the music, I loved that this took place during Christmas because the mix of spy-like fanfares and Christmas music kept my heart racing and nostalgia ever flowing. But I also appreciated that it knew when to get serious with themes like those of Ronin and Maya, aka Echo. The characters here, as well as their chemistry, worked so well, especially our dynamic duo of the very reticent veteran and the very talkative rookie, and I just can't wait to see them again, hopefully next time on the big screen, and hopefully with more characters from the MCU. Kate and Yelena were fantastic together and definitely standout characters from this show, and I hope that we get to see them meet Peter Parker at some point in the near future. Which leads me to my number 1, Spider-Man No Way Home. When they said that this was Spider-Man Endgame, they weren't kidding. I could not believe my eyes for the second half of this film, and while I feel like the first half did have some issues, the film injected it with so much fun and much needed character development for Peter that I simply just don't care. From watching Peter following the path of helping rather than hurting, as his Aunt May encouraged him to do, with the help of Tony's tech of course, to watching it blow up in his face and watch May die before his eyes, this film was an emotional roller coaster that showed what it means to be Peter Parker from this universe or any other one. It's been said that the best Spider-Man films are the ones where Spider-Man wins, but Peter Parker loses, and I think this is the film that encompasses that best. From being Tony Stark's golden boy with the fancy suits and being surrounded by friends, to the lonely and poor Peter Parker that we all know and love, this home trilogy feels like the real origin story for our friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. The visuals here are fantastic, from Peter's fight with Doctor Strange in the Mirror Dimension to the Super Spidey team-up in the final act, and the music tugs at the heartstrings, incorporating themes from all of the live-action Spider-Man films to date. There has never been a better time to be a Spider-Man fan, and I just can't wait to see where the story goes from here. But that's my list. Don't forget to share yours down in the comments below and let me know what was your favorite film and what was your favorite Disney Plus show of 2021. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button and share it with a friend, as that is what helps this channel out the most. Thank you so much for watching, guys. I will see you all next time.